Today I am making and canning some beef stew, and this is a really good way to preserve a full meal for your family if you want to have something that you easily pull out of your cabinet and you have at least 3 bowls of beef stew, like hearty size bowls of beef stew in one can. And another good thing about having a pressure cooker and canning your beef stew is that it has a shelf life of about, you could definitely get 5 years. You may even get 10 years out of it if you pressure can it correctly. So it's a really good way to have a long-term food source just in case like something happens and we get a big snow or an ice storm and you can't get to the store for a week, and you can just pop open one of these cans and heat it up, given that you have electricity or a source of heat in your home, and you have an instant hearty bowl of soup. So I'm going to show you the recipe that I like to use and the seasonings I like to use for mine. And I have a brown paper bag here with some basil because I'm drying out my basil right now to also store up for the winter. So I have had my my mason jars. Where's my tongs? I've had my mason jars in the pot now for about an hour, just kind of sitting on a low heat to just warm them up so that I can raw pack my meat into these jars, because my meat is still in its Aldi package and it is completely raw, and that's okay. If you want to sear your meat, you can, and it really locks in the flavors and makes it better, but I have a lot of meat and I don't have time to do that, so it's not a necessity to do. But if you have time and you have less meat, that is something you can do. So I'm going to go over and get one of my jars out of the water. I have both wide mouth and regular mouth jars over here in my water, and I can actually like touch it. It's not too hot to touch, but I just didn't want to take the risk in case it was. So let me open up my meat here, and I am going to just put my hands right in it because this is the kitchen and sometimes you just get your hands a little bit messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start dropping the meat in here a little bit at a time. Now I like my meat very, very flavorful. So at this point, I know I have raw meat on my hands, but I'm going to be doing this consistently. So, and the spices are going in. So my spices I have are some salt, just regular iodized table salt, and I have black pepper. This is one of my favorite things to add, and it's just that onion soup powder mix, like the French onion mix-in stuff. And then I also have some ranch powder. So I like to have really, really flavorful food whenever I cook. So I am actually going to add just little bits of each of those to the top of my meat so that they get nice and in there and in the meat. Just a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of the ranch mix. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in my vegetables. Now here's my fresh sliced carrots. I got everything from Costco a few days ago so that I could go ahead and buy it in bulk. You would be shocked at how much actually fits down inside of these cans. Like a lot fits inside a quart-sized mason jar. So you can actually get quite a bit of vegetable in here. The thing that you need to make sure that you're doing though is head space, because if you don't leave the right amount of head space, that could prove very, very detrimental to your canning process. So with the beef stew, you're going to leave 1 1/4 inch of head space, and I have a measuring tool. It comes in your kit whenever you get your funnel and your tongs and your headspace measure. So this actually has little marks on it, and I don't know if you'd be able to see the marks, but it has little marks on it, and it tells you, and I'm shaking a little bit because I haven't eaten today because I'm doing intermittent fasting. So I am a little bit shaky from having not eaten yet, but that's okay. But your Headspace tool tells you exactly how much space is in your jar, and you want to make sure whatever recipe you're following, whether you're following a bulk canning recipe, the recipe book that comes with your pressure cooker, whatever else, make sure you're measuring out that head space and getting that right. So that looks about good with the vegetables there. I'm gonna add just a little bit more and get it up a tad higher, right about there, because 1 1/4 inch of headspace is about right up to under the rim. So I've done this enough now to kind of have an idea on where stuff is, but I'm gonna measure it anyway for good measure. And then I'm just gonna sprinkle, because I didn't put a whole lot of salt in there, I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit more salt on top of those vegetables. Now what I'm going to do is set this to the side and do the other ones, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I was able to fill up with that amount of meat. I was able to fill up 6 big quart-sized jars and a little miniature jar. Sometimes I like to make smaller pint-sized jars because we do have older folks living on each side of us. And so if something happens, it's always nice to have smaller 2-serving size jars to be able to share with others in case something happens. So I was able to get one in here. I actually have tons of vegetables left, and I actually cut up like bags from Costco. So what I'm gonna do after I'm done canning my beef stew is I'm gonna move on, get my beef broth, and make some vegetable soup with some canned green beans that I've got, and actually combine all of this to make some vegetable soup. So nothing is gonna go to waste. I certainly took a lot of time canning everything, or cutting everything, so I don't want it to go bad and not be used for later on. So I've got all of my jars filled up with all my seasonings and all of my food. So what I'm going to do next is I've got some hot water on my stovetop, and I am actually going to come over and ladle some hot water over this. I'm not going to use a ton of it. You can actually also use beef broth, but I don't have enough to do vegetable soup and this. So I am just going to do some water. Coming over here and getting my top off. And actually, this is where the funnel comes in handy. Anytime you're dealing with liquids, the big funnel is wonderful for making sure that you don't have any spills of your jellies, of your liquids, of anything that you're putting in, vinegar, whatever else. So I'm gonna pour this over and just fill this about halfway. Okay, well then go into the other one, sweetie. Okay, well, I'll be right there. Apparently there's no toilet paper in the bathroom. So after I'm done helping her, I will finish loading these up with some water and I'll be back. Okay, so I have filled all the jars with warm water, and they are about ready to go in the canner. And I am actually just dipping a paper towel in a little bit of white vinegar that I put in here. You should always clean your rims, no matter what you're doing with the cans. If you're water bath canning, if you're steam canning, if you're pressure canning, you should always make sure that your rims are wiped down so that they don't have any bacteria on them. And this is just a way to safeguard all your hard work and make sure that your food does not get contaminated. And white vinegar is completely safe because it's also edible, right? So you definitely don't want to use like a cleaning solution that's not safe to eat to clean your cans with, or that'll contaminate your food too. So I'm just going to go through and quickly wipe down each of these. My lids are actually over here. Nowadays, ball canning does not make it to where you have to have hot lids. So you do not have to have these soaking in hot water any longer and have hot lids to put on your cans. Just make sure that you do wash them in hot soapy water, and make sure that the lids you're using to can meat are completely new and fresh. So you can reuse lids if you've done like a steam bath or a water bath and they've only been in there for 10, 15, 20 minutes. They're not going to have such a hardcore seal as the seal that's going to go on your canned goods that are meat goods. So the meats need absolutely brand new seals to make sure that they lock so hard in place that you could turn this can upside down and shake it and nothing comes out. So that's all it is. Not right now. School is out today, so my Rugrats are home. So I'm going to put my lid on, and I'm just going to take my rim and I'm going to tighten it only fingertip tight. So that's it, because you could actually damage your rims and cause there to be an issue with your canning process if you try and get it on as hard as possible. So just fingertip tight. And this one is also over there. You can in a second. Drink some of Judah's. Drink some of Judah's right now. I just made him some. I'll get it for you in a second. Okay, so having the kiddos home. All right, And I'm just setting my rims on and making sure they're on there well. Also, another pro tip, onions are really bad about collecting the germs in the air. If you notice, you can actually do a lot of natural remedies with onions. Like if you're sick, people say cut up an onion and put it right next to you and breathe it in all night basically, and the next day, Leah, stop. Stop. All right. And the next day, the onion will have turned a little bit of color because it's actually soaking in the germs that are in the air. So whenever I cut up all these vegetables, I make sure that I cut my onions last. So they're out in the air the least amount of time of all of the vegetables. Because you're going to use carrots and potatoes and onions, which are not high acidic vegetables, this recipe plus the meat, vegetable soup, it has to be pressure canned. You cannot can this in a water bath. This must be pressure canned for safety of the food because they are non-acidic. So I'm just finishing up with my miniature jar here before I ran out of my meat. I have turned my canner on to a higher heat now in order to have it ready for my jars to go in. So let me grab this and I will show you my canner. So my canner has about 2 inches of water in there, and I had my jars sitting in there to get them nice and warm before I started loading them up with the food. So now I'm just gonna start putting them in there a little bit at a time. 2, 3, you can see the water level rising. We don't want that water level too terribly high. You're not trying to cover your cans while they're in the canner. I'm gonna scoot these over and just create a little bit more space. I have a smaller pressure canner because this is about all I can physically handle to lift. I'll put this one in. Oh, and guys, I may not have room for my little one this time around. I will with the vegetable soup. So I'll just put the little one to the side because it already does have its seal on it. And once I'm finished canning these, it'll be okay to go in as well. So I'm gonna get my lid and I'm gonna actually angle this and put my lid on. So there we go. Okay. All right. And I am going to use a pot holder for this so I can make sure that I've got it good and in place. All right. So my lid has, let me flip you around somehow. Okay. My lid has these little rims on it, and I don't know if you could see, but they just kind of scoot underneath the pot itself so that I know that it's a nice, good, firm hold. So I am actually going to go ahead and tighten up my gaskets now. I'm sorry about making you guys sick, but for some reason my camera is not letting me like turn it around. So I'm going to do these on opposite sides of each other. I'm loosen this one up a bit. And I'm just going to tighten them to where they're, again, fingertip tight. And I'm going to move opposite of each other for that to tighten. All right. Now I'm going to crank up my heat a little bit more and let it start rolling. So you cannot use an Instapot to do pressure canning. And the reason why, my kids are curious. Y'all, I'm trying to make a video. Give me another 5 minutes, okay? Come on, guys. So loud. Okay, the reason why you can't use an Instapot is because of this thing here. This is the pressure gauge, and it makes sure that this maintains the same amount of pressure for the full 90 minutes needed to can meat. So without this gauge and making sure your pressure stays the same for 90 minutes, you can't guarantee that you have a good solid seal on your meats. So you cannot use an Instapot to pressure can your meats. You can use it if it has settings on it, so like water bath can to boil the water inside of it. I don't recommend that because it's actually a little bit more dangerous than just going ahead and using your water on the stovetop just because of the height of it and stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't think it would be easier to water bath can in an Instapot, but you definitely can't use it to pressure cook. So don't try that because that will be dangerous. So now I'm going to wait This thing, once this starts building pressure, this will start shooting steam on. And I'm going to let that shoot steam for about 10 minutes or so, because that's going to get the rest of the air out of my pot. And then I'm going to put my gauge, because of where we are, we're not in the mountains. So everything is mostly on the 10. So after that comes to steam for 10 minutes, I'm gonna drop my 10-pound pressure gauge on, and I'm gonna let it roll and set my timer once I put that on for 90 minutes. And then once it's done, I'm gonna let it sit, reduce its pressure, and then I'm gonna get those beautiful jars out, and I'll show you what they look like in about 2.5 hours. Bye. Well, it's been a few hours and I am back. I showed you a little video of what my pot looks like cooling down. And now I am going to get my jars out. So this is going to be very tricky because these jars are really hot, but I want you to see what it looks like for a pressure cooker, mainly because you don't need to be afraid of these. Okay, I know that they're really loud and really scary and really heavy, and I was actually terrified of the Instapot when I first got it, and then I started using it and I loved it. Same thing with my pressure canner. When I first got it, I was terrified of it, but the more I've watched videos and learned from other homesteaders, the more I've come to really love it and appreciate it for what it brings to the table. So as dangerous as it can be, you have things that you do anyway to prevent yourself from getting injured anytime you're cooking. So you'll use oven mitts to get something out of the oven, and you'll be careful with your cast iron and make sure that you have an oven mitt on when you're rotating your cast iron. You monitor your boiling water so it doesn't overflow. So you do things during cooking anyway that prevent dangerous situations from happening. So the same thing can be done with a pressure canner. You just read the instructions, ask questions in homesteading groups or whatever, and you can learn how to properly use the pressure canner and not be afraid of it. So now I've got my oven mitt on. My pressure canner, and I hope you can see this because I can't flip this around. My pressure canner is at 0 pressure now. I slowly reduced the pressure. So once my timer went off, I started turning, there's my dial. So I turned it from the middle of low to high. So I had it sitting there to maintain my pressure. Then I turned it on to the 2 burners and started moving it more toward low. And then as it started reducing pressure, I moved it to low again on 1 burner. And then about 20 minutes after I started doing that, I turned the pressure off altogether and let it reduce. So you don't cut your heat altogether with a pressure canner. You need to slowly reduce your heat from it and not just boop, turn it off and it's done. So now that my pressure, so you see it's at 0 there, which means it is safe now to remove my pressure valve. That's going to release the final little bit of pressure that's in this. This is why you remove that first, and then we're going to let that go. And you need to remove that with an oven mitt because it is hot. It's been having steam going through it for the past, with warm up and cool down for the past about 3 hours. So it's going to be really hot with steam going through it. So I'm going to wait for this to reduce. And then once it stops making the sizzling sound, we're going to unscrew. And I can still hear my jars inside. They're still boiling inside, so they're gonna be really hot. So we're gonna have to be very careful when we're getting those out as well. Something else you need to know about the pressure canner is you never lift it from this. This is just for lifting the lid. It has handles on the sides, but those are extremely hot. They're just like cast iron. The handles get as hot as the pot itself. So if you're going to handle your pot with it being hot, then you actually need to use oven mitts to lift it and stuff, but I don't recommend handling it until it's completely cooled down to whatever room temperature is. And then you need to get it and wash it and lubricate it and take care of it because it needs to be babied. And I can also make a video on how to baby your pot as well to get the most use and the safest use out of it. So now I have Lizzie home, Eliana's down for a nap, and Judah's riding the golf cart with Jason. So hopefully that means everything will stay calm. And it looks like it is done. Just a little bit of spurting, just a little bit. I've got my cans of vegetable soup ready to go. I used up the rest of my vegetables that I had, and all but the onions, which are going to go in my enchiladas for dinner. And I added in some lima beans and some rice and beef broth. Hey, Lizzie.
play Animal Crossing?
We will. She wants me to play her favorite video game with her. So now I'm going to just very carefully, because they are a little bit hot. There we go. So I'm going to very carefully and one at a time open my, this is very hard to do while holding the phone, just FYI. Okay. And these are a little bit hot because they do have metal underneath them, even though this is rubber, but it's still quite warm because it's been up against metal. So it's not too hot to touch, but it is quite warm. Okay, when you open your pressure canner, you always open the lid away from your face. Same thing goes with the Instapot or anything else that you're boiling. You always open your lid away from your face. So I'm gonna rotate it and I'm going to open it up. Oh yeah, so pretty. Okay, I'm gonna put my lid over here on my prepared towel, where I'm also going to put my jars. I'm sorry I'm moving you around, but I only have one hand to work with. So I'm gonna put my oven mitt right there. And let's see if I can we like actually balance? No, that's not gonna balance, I'm sorry. We'll just do that, how about that? Okay. Lizzie, back up, sweetie, this is hot. So I'm going to grab one of my jars out. There's still quite a bit of water in there, so I don't want that to touch me because it is hot. You can see maybe, hopefully, you can see where it's still boiling inside. It's beautiful. That's exactly what we want. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to a prepared towel that's laid out and ready for it, because now we want to give them time to set and stabilize. Okay, so we've let the temperature come down in the Instapot, or the listen to me, the pressure canner. And so now we've been able to open it, so everything's stabilized that way with the canner, but now we need to stabilize our jars. So I'm taking those out and letting them stabilize one by one by just letting them, Lizzie, move, sweetie. I've got hot, hot, hot jars. Move, baby. I've got hot jars, okay? I don't want you to get burned. You need to move back. Listen to me. Okay. So, yeah, she's not really listening. And the lighting in here is not really that good, actually. So I've got my jars that are just, literally, I'm gonna just leave them sitting here until they're cool enough for me to touch with my fingers. At that point, now I'm probably not gonna videotape that. Oh, I slipped. I'm probably not gonna videotape that, because what I will only do then is just remove the rims and check the seals. So the seals are gonna pop down. I'm not gonna touch them right now because they're really, really hot. But you can see when a seal is not done, it's gonna make those little popping sounds as it's going in. Ooh, there's one. See, those haven't gone in yet. So that means it's not sealed. So it's not vacuumed, sealed, it's not airtight. Whenever these seal and I take the rims off, they're going to be so sealed that literally I could take the jar and shake it with no rim and nothing is going to happen to it. Nothing's going to fly out. It is going to be sealed for 5 to 10 years. So it is protected. Oh, I don't have that one good. Okay. So that's all I'm going to do now. I'm going to get them out. I'm going to leave some room between them to let the air circulate, so that while they're cooling, the air can circulate around them. See? And now I have all these wonderful cans of soup that are ready to go with my healthy vegetables that I sliced up and put in there. And this is a really hearty meal to give to somebody else if they're sick. You will like break off your little fingernails if you're trying to get these lids off. So if you're going to give it to somebody and you know that they are going to use it right away, you can go ahead and break the seal and let them know you've broken the seal and just put a rim on it, because they're going to break the seal and put it in the refrigerator anyway. So if you're going to give it to somebody, all you need is a butter knife and you put it under the part of the rim that's like the closest. So there's a little screwy part where the lid goes on, and you put it between the glass and the rim that are the closest together, and you just kind of work with it until it pops and you can hear the sound as it lets go. So that's a good way, like if you're gonna share it with somebody who's older and has arthritis or whatever and can't open it for themselves, you could pop that seal. Oh, did you hear that? That was a nice little pop going on. So we got a little pop out of it. So anyway, that is how you make canned beef stew. I hope you learned something. I hope you're not afraid of a pressure canner. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to let me know. I can do a video on my pressure canner and how I take care of it, and maybe share some videos from other people that I learned from, because I'm pretty much just regurgitating what I'm learning for you guys, because I'm learning from like 7 different homesteading groups. So there's a lot of information swirling around in my head all the time from them, and I try and like condense it, which is why I started my own homesteading group, because I'm kind of pulling what I find is the most important and relevant for where I live, which is in South. So some of the things they share are not relevant because they live up in the mountains and such. So anyway, I am going to pull out the rest of these cans. I'm going to put in some more water. I'm going to get my vegetable soup rolling, and I'll see you another time. Bye.